in the frozen wilds beyond the veil of memory, where honor is carved in frost and blood, their story unfolds. This is the Frostbone legacy. If you're drawn to tales of grit, grief and glory, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel and ring the bell to never miss an echo from the past. Want to support the legacy and unlock exclusive perks? Join as a channel member today. Chapter 2, Blood in the Snow. Part 1, The Hard Road. The road vanished after the 5th mile. What passed for one, just a trail of rutted earth outside Varenthal's north gate, was soon devoured by the encroaching wild, snow-glazed stone, gnarled pine roots, and frost that bit even through boots. Mia's feet were blistered before the sun finished rising. She said nothing, not yet. Dax hadn't spoken since they left the gate. He walked 10 paces ahead, cloak dragging behind him like the wake of a ship, his axe glinting softly beneath its leather wrap. He didn't look back, didn't slow. The way he moved, measured, relentless, suggested he had no interest in whether she kept up or fell dead. The sun hung low in the east, pale and sickly behind thin grey cloud. It didn't warm anything. Ash still clung to the back of Mia's throat. Her breath fogged heavily, then froze in her lashes. Her satchel was heavier now than it had ever been, not with weight, but with the memory of her mother's hand letting go. Every step north was a betrayal, of who she'd been, of where she came from. But she kept going. By midday, her fingers were numb. She tried flexing them inside her gloves. No use. Her stomach knotted. She hadn't eaten since the night before. The cold made it worse, chewed at her bones from the inside out. Still, she refused to ask him for food, or for anything. Finally, the slope crested. Dax stopped at the ridge, looked down into the shallow basin below, nothing but wind-brushed white, dotted with twisted bramble and frozen stumps. No sign of shelter, no road, just wildland. Maya reached the top seconds later, panting, half-collapsed. Dax didn't turn to her. You walk like a drunk goat. She blinked snow from her eyes, and you talk like a back end. He moved again, then stopped following. I'm not following. I'm being dragged. Same thing. No, it isn't. Following means I have a choice. Dragged means I'm being punished. Dax stepped over a fallen pine and kept moving. Call it what you want. Just keep your feet under you. She did for 2 more steps, then stopped. No, he turned. Mia stood with her arms out, breathing hard. Her face was red with wind, eyes narrow. I haven't slept, I haven't eaten. I'm freezing, and you haven't said a single useful word to me in hours. You're still breathing. Barely. Then you're doing fine. Why are you like this? She snapped. You think this makes me strong? Freezing and starving and stumbling through ice? Dax shrugged. Stronger than laying dead in a burning house. That stopped her. He let it settle. Then added, quieter, You want mercy, you should have stayed south. She stared at him. You think the world's going to give you a blanket and a warm smile because you've got a kind heart? You think you matter to the snow? You don't. I don't. Nothing does. Not until you make it. Mia's lip curled. And how do you make it? By shutting off everything human? No, he said. By walking forward. He turned and did exactly that. Mia followed. Not because she wanted to, because stopping meant dying. By nightfall, the trees closed in. Gnarled pine and frostbitten birch formed a loose canopy, filtering the moonlight into scattered beams. The silence here was thicker, deeper, the kind that felt like it had weight. They camped beneath a slanted outcrop of stone. Dax built a small fire from dry bark and pine needles. He didn't offer her food. She found a chunk of root bread in her satchel, half stale, half frozen, and chewed it in silence. Later, after the fire dulled, Mia curled beneath her cloak and stared at the flickering shadows across the snow. Her limbs ached. Her skin burned in places, went numb in others. She turned her head toward him. Dax sat with his back to a rock, axe across his knees, head tilted slightly down, eyes closed, breathing steady. Then he spoke. Not in common, not in anything she recognized. The words were low and rough, like stone over ice, whispered, barely formed, but rhythmic. A chant. Frostbone. Mia didn't know the language, but she recognized the cadence. It wasn't prayer, it was memory. A lullaby for ghosts. She closed her eyes, and the cold didn't bite quite as hard. Part 2. The Killing Ground. The snow fell harder come morning. No wind, just a steady veil of white that dulled the world to whispers. Trees thinned the farther north they traveled, giving way to long stretches of exposed stone and icy scrub. Every hour made Mia's limbs heavier. Every step hurt. She didn't complain. Dax gave no orders, no plans, just walked. By late afternoon, the land changed again. The trail narrowed into a ravine of bent shale and packed snow, cliffs rising on either side like jaws. Dax slowed. Mia noticed it too, how quiet it got. The birds stopped, the wind stilled. Then came the click, a wrong rhythm buried in the snow's hush. Metal, light, intent. Dax moved fast, shoving Mia behind a boulder just as a bolt screamed past and shattered against the stone. Down, he barked, already moving low and fast through the drift. Mia caught her breath, heart hammering, hands pressed against frozen rock. Footsteps, 4, maybe 5. Approaching from the east slope, fast and spread wide. Coordinated, not bandits. Mercs. Dax vanished between stones, a shadow among shadows. The first attacker came into view. Fur-lined armor, city-forged steel, crossbow raised. Mia didn't even have time to shout. Dax dropped from above, landing behind him like a ghost. One quick motion, arm around the neck, blade under the chin, then silence. The man dropped twitching into the snow. Another turned at the sound, too slow. Dax stepped forward and drove his axe up beneath the man's ribcage. He let out a short bark of blood, then folded. Screams followed. 2 more figures rushed the ravine mouth, blades drawn, eyes wild. They saw Mia first. She froze. One rushed her with a snarl, and Dax was there before the man's feet finished moving. Axe to collarbone, a spray of steam and red. The last one ran. Dax didn't chase. Hefted his axe, aimed and threw. The sound it made when it struck was final. Then there was only snow again, and Mia's breathing, and steam rising from 4 broken bodies. Dax walked back, silent. He bent to retrieve his axe, cleaned it without ceremony, and looked at her. "You hurt?" Mia shook her head, but her knees trembled. "You killed them," she said. He looked around. "Yes, they didn't even say anything. They weren't here to talk. You didn't give them the chance." He met her eyes flatly. "And what if I had?" Silence. Dax crouched and pulled a stamped medallion from one of the corpses, tossed it toward her. She caught it, looked. Southern make. Noble seal, not local. "They weren't freelancers," he said. "Someone sent them, paid." Her hands tightened around the medallion. "They wanted you alive," Dax said. "That one," he nodded toward the man who grabbed at her, "was carrying bindings, shackles, and a poison blade. If they'd killed me first, they'd have dragged you south on a chain." Mia swallowed. Her mouth tasted like metal. "We bury them?" she asked. Dax shook his head. "We burn them." She looked up sharply. He was already gathering wood. "Can't risk what follows rot." She hesitated, then joined him. They built the fire in silence, bodies stacked on rock. When it lit, the smell was worse than she expected. Dax stood with his eyes closed as the flames rose. Mia stood beside him. The frost wind howled again, and this time it sounded almost like a warning. Part 3. Lessons in Bone. They didn't speak the next morning. The fire had burned down to wet ash. Smoke clung to their clothes, their skin, even their hair. Mia rubbed soot from her cheek and kept her eyes on the trail ahead. Dax walked 10 steps ahead again. The wind had shifted, less biting, but heavier, like it carried weight instead of cold. By noon, the land began to rise. Hills like the backs of buried beasts rolled out before them, their flanks iced and strewn with shattered pine. Dax didn't slow. He moved like he knew exactly where he was going, even if no path marked the snow. Mia followed in his boot prints. It helped. She hated that it helped. "Who trained you?" she asked finally. He didn't look back. No one. Someone must have. He kept walking. People don't just come out knowing how to kill with an axe and throw it clean through a man's back. "No," he said. "They don't. But it's not a hard thing to learn when you're the only one left alive." She frowned. "What does that mean?" Dax stepped up onto a ridge and looked out over the valley. "You want stories?" "I want to understand who I'm traveling with." He glanced down at her. "I'm the one who got you out. That's all the understanding you need." She folded her arms. "You know, at some point, you're going to have to stop pushing me away." "Why?" he said. "You planning to braid my hair?" She gave him a look. Dax started walking again. "I'm not your friend. I'm not your family. I'm the only thing keeping you alive between here and whatever's left of Frostbone. If I die, you die. That's the math." "That's not math. That's a rule." "Good. Stay behind it." She clenched her jaw, kicked at the snow, and followed anyway. The sun crept lower. The wind picked up. A flock of frost crows passed overhead, silent, black, gliding like knives across the sky. Mia watched them disappear over a ridge. You think they'll send more? She asked. Mercs? Probably. Why not kill me instead? Because dead girls don't sell well. She grimaced. That's dark. It's true. They walked in silence after that. Just before dusk, Dax led them into a narrow pass flanked by high stone walls. Snow drifted heavier here, clinging to everything. At the far end, the path widened into a kind of bowl, ringed by dead trees and broken rock. Mia took one step in and stopped. Bone everywhere. Spines, ribs, skulls, all half buried in snow. Not old, maybe a few months. Fresh enough to still stink where the sun hit right. What the hell? She breathed. Dax knelt beside a curved spine, ran a hand across the notches in the bone. Giant cat, he muttered. You've got to be kidding. They hunt south this time of year. She stepped back instinctively. He looked up at her. Don't run. I wasn't going to. Don't run, he repeated. If it's watching, it's waiting for fear. And if it's not, then you still don't run. He stood and scanned the far side of the clearing. We sleep here? She asked, incredulous. No, we cross. They moved quickly through the boneyard. Every crunch underfoot made her flinch. She counted at least 6 different skeletons, none of them fully human. At the far edge, they found claw marks in the stone, deep ones, wider than her hand. Maya stared at them, then at the tree beside it, shredded from root to canopy. Remind me why we're going north again, she asked. Dax didn't smile. Because it's worse going back. They made camp an hour later beneath an overhang of black rock. No fire this time, no talking. But as the stars came out, Mia sat awake, staring at the claw marks burned into her memory. She didn't say it aloud, but it lived behind her eyes. What the hell am I walking toward? Part 4. Names in the Snow. They reached the first of the high passes by midday, wind tearing like blades through the gap. No trees here, no shelter, just jagged stone and white endlessness. The peaks ahead loomed jagged and brutal, black rock dusted with pale snow like charred teeth. Dax led them into the cut between 2 ridges. Mia pulled her cloak tighter and ducked her head, eyes stinging. The wind howled through the rocks, making her feel small, insignificant. You ever named a place before? He asked suddenly. She looked up. What? A place, he said. You name it, you remember it. Mia squinted into the wind. This one's easy. Bastard's Mouth. Dax barked a short laugh. First time she'd heard anything like amusement from him. Fitting, he said. They kept walking. The trail veered along a ledge barely wide enough for one person, below sheer drop. 1,000 feet of silence. Mia didn't look down. By the time the trail widened again, the sun was bruising toward the west. Dax stopped, pointed with his axe. There. Across the next slope sat a small stone hut, collapsed in parts, roof sunken but still standing. Its stones were black with old fire, the remains of a watchpost. Mia followed him down the slope and into the ruin. Inside was nothing but ash, splintered timbers, and a rusted fire ring. Still, it was shelter. Dax kicked snow off a stone bench and sat. We'll rest here. Mia dropped her pack. Her hands were raw and her legs shook, but she didn't let him see. Who were they? She asked after a while. He looked over. The ones in the ravine, the ones who came for me. Dax wiped a blade across his pant leg. I told you, mercenaries. Yes, but hired by who? He was quiet a moment. My guess, one of the old cities, maybe Durnhall, maybe the deep houses. They hear rumors. Word spreads faster than it should. Mia sat across from him. You mean word about me? Dax nodded. About what I am. What you might be. Her hands curled into fists. I'm not even sure what that means. You're Varkun's blood, that's all it needs to mean. Mia looked away. I didn't ask to be. Doesn't matter. Doesn't it? The wind moaned through a cracked window frame. Outside, snow drifted sideways. Mia stared at the fire ring. No fire. No warmth. Just stone and the man across from her, carved colder than the mountain. If I'm going to die out here, she said, I'd at least like to know what I'm dying for. You're not dying, he said. Not unless you stop asking the wrong questions. She looked up sharply. He met her gaze. You want answers? Earn them. She almost asked how, but something in his eyes stopped her. Instead, she stood and walked to the far wall. There, someone had scratched symbols into the stone, old ones, Orcish. She didn't recognize the words, but the shape of them felt like echoes in her chest. Names, a memory. What is this place? She asked, tracing a line of the script with one gloved finger. Dax stood, walked to her side. Old Frostbone way station, he said. Long before my time. Fighters would rest here between raids. If they died, their names went on the wall. She touched the runes again. What happens if you come back? Then you scratch the name out. She looked at him. Not everyone gets to come back, he said. Outside, the wind screamed down the pass like a voice with no throat. Mia turned from the names and wrapped herself tighter. For the first time, she didn't feel like a girl out of place. She felt like a mark waiting for her name. Part 5. Fire and Echo. They left the ruined way station before dawn. No words passed between them, just cold, just wind, just the long uphill climb into thinner air and thicker silence. By mid-morning, the clouds broke. It wasn't sun, nothing that generous, but a washed-out grey light that made the snow glitter like frost-bitten glass. They paused on a ridgeline, both breathless, both still. That's when Mia felt it. Not wind, not cold. A presence. She turned, scanning the white expanse behind them. Nothing moved. She looked to Dax. He already had his axe unwrapped. "We're being followed," he said. She nodded, heart picking up. "Mercs?" He shook his head. Would have struck by now. They moved fast after that. No rest, no breaks. Dax led them down a switchback trail that carved into the bones of the mountain. Snow gathered in deep troughs. The trees returned, stunted, gnarled things that leaned like they'd grown afraid of something. Mia felt it too. That pressure, that hum. They camped low in a narrow ravine ringed with frost-shattered stone. Dax lit a smokeless fire, then ringed it with salt from a pouch sewn into his cloak. Mia watched him do it, but didn't ask. Not yet. That night she dreamed of antlers. A great black figure, crowned with horns, walking slow through the snow. Eyes like embers, breath like smoke. It didn't speak, it only looked at her. She woke with her breath caught and her mouth dry. Dax sat across from her, not asleep. "You felt it," he said. She nodded. "What was it?" He looked into the flames. Something old. That's not an answer. He didn't respond. She wanted to press him, but a distant sound broke the thought. Distant. Rhythmic. A howl, but deeper, like stone grinding in its throat. Mia went still. Dax rose and stepped to the edge of the ravine, eyes narrowing. It came again, closer now. A heavy call. Then another. Then two more from a different direction. He turned back. Pack. They moved fast. No fire, no trace. Dax led them up a frozen slope to a cragged overlook, and from there Mia saw them, shapes moving in the trees below. 7, maybe more. Tall, broad, some on all fours, some upright. Horned. Giants? Worse, Dax said. They ducked low and pressed north. They moved through night, through exhaustion, through the ache in Maya's legs and the fire in her lungs. She didn't stop. Couldn't. Every instinct screamed to look back, but she didn't dare. By the time the sky began to pale, the sounds were behind them, but not gone. They collapsed at the edge of a frozen creek, half buried in frost fern and pine needles. Dax stood watch while Mia slept. He said nothing when she stirred, just offered her a strip of dried meat and pointed to the trail. The road wasn't done with them yet. Part 6, What Remains. The creek ran thin and black through the trees, its edges rimmed in brittle ice. They followed it for hours, the mountains softening behind them, the horizon flattening into low hills and frozen glades. Each step north felt colder, emptier. Yet under it all there was a current. Mia could feel it. An expectation, as if the land itself held its breath. Mia no longer asked where they were going. The further they walked, the more she realized Dax was following something beyond memory. He was tracking scars on the land, reading stories left in wind and stone. Sometimes he paused to study a shattered pine, a half-buried stone, a mark scraped into bark. Each time she saw his eyes flicker with recognition and something like sorrow. By midday, they reached a high ridge, and Dax stopped. Below them, stretched across a snow-crushed valley, lay the scattered bones of what had once been a camp. Furs still flapped from broken posts. One half-buried watchtower leaned sideways, half its frame blackened by fire. Piles of timber marked where longhouses had once stood, all of it dusted in white. Quiet. But Mia saw at once. This wasn't the end of a tribe, but a memory written in ice and ash. A place once alive, now left behind. Dax crouched at the edge of the ridge. "Old outpost," he said quietly, voice careful with the past. "First ring. This was where we watched for the southern traders, where children learned the shape of the axe. Lost 3 winters back, not to war, just to time and thin blood. Too few to hold the walls." They descended into the valley, boots crunching softly in the brittle snow. The air smelled of cold wood and ancient smoke. Mia's breath clouded before her. She ran a gloved hand over the splintered timbers, feeling the story under her palm, marks left by lives long gone, but not lost. At the heart of the ruin, they found a circle of standing stones. Some were toppled, some marked by weather, but in the center lay a carved altar, its face etched with the Frostbone rune, split strength. Dax brushed snow from the stone, exposing the lines beneath. Not a grave, he murmured, a promise. When this outpost fell, the survivors carried what they could to the heart of Frostbone. Not all made it. Some stayed to hold the line, some wandered, some never left this ground. Mia knelt beside the altar. It feels wrong, leaving it empty. Nothing's empty, Dax said, so long as someone remembers. She let her gaze wander over the valley. Among the debris she found toys carved from bone, a rusted pan, a length of faded cloth snagged on a stump. Every object was a story, some unfinished, some forgotten, some still waiting to be told. They walked through the old fire pit, choked in snow but ringed with the black stones of many winters. Mia bent to pick up a handful of char, sifting the brittle flakes through her fingers. It must have been loud here, she said, voice barely above a whisper. Crowded. Full. Dax nodded. It was. Not like now. Does anyone come back? Only for memory. The true camp, our heart, still stands north beyond the last ridge. Those who endure gather there for as long as strength remains. They lingered a while longer, each in silence, each caught in thoughts that felt both heavy and fleeting. Crows watched from the trees, silent, unmoving. Mia shivered as a gust swept through the ruin, rattling the bones of the old place. She touched the altar one last time, tracing the Frostbone rune. She felt the cold not just as weather, but as witness, a mark left behind so the living could remember the price of forgetting. When they left the valley behind, Dax paused once more at the edge of the ridge, looking back at the ruin. Places like this, each one is a bone in the body of the tribe. Lose enough and the heart falters, but as long as we walk, the blood moves on. Mia glanced north, seeing nothing but white hills and distant shadow. But she felt the direction settle in her chest, a pull stronger than fear, deeper than doubt. They turned their backs to the silent outpost and walked on, following the faint line of bootprints toward the living heart of Frostbone. Snow began to fall again, soft, endless, as if the world itself was erasing the old scars, preparing for whatever came next. Part 7. Bound by the cold. They reached the next ridge just before dusk, the world falling away beneath their feet in a sweep of snow and shadow. The trail had narrowed to a blade of wind-scoured stone, hugging the cliffside like an old scar. No trees grew here, only naked rock, the sky and the wind, howling, ceaseless, sharp as hunger. Mia drew her cloak tighter, but cold lived in her now, marrow deep and tireless. Below, the basin unfurled, white and vast, dotted with the dark ribs of winter-bare trees and the black remnants of old burns. At the far edge, almost lost in the blue haze of distance, a thin column of smoke curled skyward. It twisted in the wind, insistent and fragile, a sign of warmth, of stubborn life refusing to fade. Mia squinted, her lips numb. "Is that it?" Dax said nothing, but his stillness was answer enough. She edged closer to the rim, letting her gaze sweep the valley's distant wall. The smoke looked impossibly faint from here, a thread pulled through the bleakness, but it was real. "That's Frostbone?" she asked again, and this time the word tasted different, hopeful, wary, heavy. "What remains of it?" Dax answered. "The heart, the last hold, those who wouldn't scatter." She watched the smoke, a lump in her throat. "It looks small," he nodded. "It is." Silence grew between them, thick as the sky above. "The elders, will they be there?" she asked, her voice barely carrying above the wind. "The ones who stayed," Dax said. "The stubborn, the hard. Not many left, but enough to keep a fire burning. And they'll know who I am. They'll know you're not from here, but they'll see what you bring with you." Mia's jaw tightened, breath clouding in the dusk. She stared at the thin smoke, wondering what it would mean to walk into that camp, as a stranger, as blood, as something both new and old. Dax started along the ridge, motioning her forward. They walked in silence, boots crunching over wind-blown ice and loose stone. The air was thin here, brittle, filled with the quiet threat of a world always on the edge of closing in. They reached a hollow beneath a shelf of granite where the wind softened. Dax knelt beside a low stone, brushing snow from its surface. Beneath the rime was a familiar mark, a curve and slash cut deep, Frostbone, the rune of split strength. "This place remembers," he said, not looking up. Mia crouched beside him, fingertips tracing the ancient groove. Who left this here? Someone who needed to believe it mattered, that someone would return. He stood, adjusting the axe on his back. The campfire smoke still drifted in the distance, a point of light in all the cold. Mia rose, feeling the ache in her legs, the uncertainty knotted in her chest. "Do you regret coming for me?" she asked softly. Dax was silent, the sky darkening around them. The wind caught his cloak, made it snap behind him like an old war banner. "No," he said at last, "not anymore." She met his gaze, searching for judgment and finding only exhaustion and something else, something gentler, fleeting as sun on snow. "I thought you hated me," she admitted. "I did," he replied. "For what I thought you'd make me lose, for what I thought you'd remind me of. But you kept walking." She nodded, and for a moment there was a fragile truce, an understanding formed in hardship, not words. Mia let her eyes linger on the mark, the snow, the smoke on the far horizon. "I'm not ready," she said. "No one ever is," Dax replied quietly. "I don't know who I'm supposed to be." He glanced at her, his eyes as pale and relentless as the land. "That's the only reason to go forward." They left the hollow together, descending the ridge as the last light bled from the sky. Below, the column of smoke glowed against the dusk, guiding them onward. Mia gripped the dagger at her side, its weight no longer foreign but grounding, proof of something earned, if not yet understood. With each step, the cold pressed in, but she felt the shape of her resolve, new, unsteady, but real. They moved into the valley, step by step, drawn by the promise of firelight and fate. Frostbone, what remained of it, waited ahead, not as a memory, but as the next trial. Snow fell behind them, soft and endless, covering their footprints as they crossed from memory into what was left to claim. The legacy lives on, carried into new worlds. Watch more to see how their story continues.